Welcome, everyone, and welcome. We have James Baraz with us. James is a longtime meditation teacher. He co-founded the Spirit Rock Meditation Center in Northern California, and he's the co-author of two books, including Awakening Joy, which is also a course he leads. Welcome, James.
Thanks for having me, Alice.
You're welcome. I'm glad you're here. And why don't you share with people about your work, what you do, what you've been doing, and how you got to where you are now.
Um, I've been teaching mindfulness meditation and Buddhist philosophy for some time, since 1978, and I teach retreats. As you said, I teach a course that many people have taken called Awakening Joy, which is a way of putting Buddhist principles and teachings and practices into a user-friendly, accessible way that incline towards well-being. And yeah, it seems to be effective. Well, if people do the practices, they work. So,
Great.
and I also a couple of other things I can mention. Very involved with climate. I'm part of One Earth Sangha. I'm on the Guiding Teachers Council for One Earth Sangha, which is a really very wonderful organization about conscious responses to climate change, and like to engage in the world and put the practice to good use in inviting others to express their practice in caring.
Yeah. And what do you, I guess I have a couple questions, but I'll start with the second one. Um, what do you see as the difference between conscious versus unconscious action in the world, and how does mindfulness and Buddhist practice make a difference in how people engage?
Hmm. Um, well, another word for consciousness is awareness, and it's being aware, the way I think of it and the way that it's put out in these teachings, aware of what leads to suffering and what leads to happiness. And although most everybody, I'd say everybody, wants to be happy or feeling less bad, everything they do is motivated by the thought of feeling better or feeling less bad. Many people go about doing the very things that cause more suffering and pain to themselves or to others. So I think part of becoming aware and conscious is seeing where happiness really lies, and cultivating those qualities both for yourself and as a gift to everyone around, because that's one of the greatest sources of happiness.
So what, for I have some background, right, in Buddhist theory and practice, and for people who might not, what are some things that people do that they think will make them happy but don't?
Um, getting getting sucked into one of the main diseases of our modern civilization, more. More does not necessarily translate into true well-being. And so we've been fed the game is about getting acquiring as being a source of well-being for me, but actually I love a teaching called Matenuta, which is knowing just enough. What
Mm,
is just enough for moderation? What's going to satisfy your needs without getting seduced or addicted into thinking that the next thing I manufacture, my mind manufactures as going to bring me happiness, uh, will do that, and realize that it's knowing the difference between what you need and what you want, because there's an endless manufacturing of desires, and many
Mm,
people think if I create a desire and get it gratified, satisfied, and put them close enough together so there's no gaps, that's happiness.
mm,
But that's a futile endeavor. So to see, oh, it's not about getting the next thing, but about feeling satisfied and content with what we have, and whatever beyond that is can be a source of gratitude, but also a source of contribution.
mm, mm. Okay. So I'm intrigued by the anything that's extra can be a source of contribution, and I don't think you just mean philanthropically. And backing up though, so there are some terrible things happening on on Earth, but between people and the environment.
I've
Uh,
noticed. Yeah.
yeah, right. And so if we like, I understand being satisfied with, like, in my case, I have a cute little house. I have a family that I get along with. I have a bicycle. I can be very content with those things. And can I be content with babies burning alive? Or um so yeah, what's the response to, reacting to terrible things?
Well, the whole idea is to relieve suffering for yourself and for others. And if you can do something that lessens the suffering for others around you, and that can express your caring in a spirit of contribution, um, that's not tinged or sourced in hatred, but in love, then that will be probably one of the most effective things you can do, and one of the most effective sources of happiness and well-being, as long as you're not being a martyr in it or think that it's up to you to save the world, but to just do your part, coming from a place of fullness, and coming from a place of, like I said, gratitude. And so there's a balance between letting your heart be touched, but not being overwhelmed, and letting your heart break to the point that you're in grief, in overwhelm, in hatred, in othering, but just letting your love and caring lead the way.
Mm, yeah, that's very beautiful, and that feels right, because
That's good.
I think our instinct is to go to at least anger and outrage, if not actually hate. And des- desperation comes up for me, right? Which I know is kind of the opposite of equanimity. And
Well, if you go underneath the anger and the outrage, which are very natural and human responses to all the pain and the suffering, the anger is both a protection and an expression of the frustration, but it's the outer level of the interface with that suffering. But if you go underneath that anger, to what Pema Chodron, a wonderful teacher, calls the soft spot underneath there, There's anger and there's outrage because you care. And if you get to that place where you care and it hurts, and you can hold that hurt without feeling overwhelmed, and you go even below that care, the source of that care is love.
It's love.
So it's going deeper levels than just having the anger and the hatred and the outrage lead the way, because you're just adding more hatred to the stew when you act from that place. So a big part of the meditation or the practice of greater awareness is getting in touch with those vulnerable places inside that hurt, and then transforming that hurt and that anger and that outrage, into skillful action and coming from compassion and love.
Compassion and love. Yeah, that's really interesting. Actually, what that makes me think of is there's an evolutionary psychology book written, I think, in the 50s called On Aggression by Conrad Lorenz. And I didn't read all of it, but when my roommate read it, he said um, that they found uh, that species that don't have violence don't have love, or don't appear to display love. That they
Species that don't have violence don't appear to display love.
So when you're saying that, this anger and outrage, that it stems from love, um, there's some evolutionary evidence that they are linked that way, which I'm not here to say, that violence is inevitable, or that violence is the price we pay for love, and the, caring.
Well, it's also about just being in touch with what you feel. And so if there's not, you can be complacent, you can go be numb, and not be violent, but not be in touch with the juice. I think it's possible to feel love and feel caring without violence, but if you're not feeling all of the what's sometimes called negative emotions, then chances are, excuse me, you're probably living in denial. So you don't want to be in denial, because that's a big price to pay to go numb. But you want to be able to, the way I see it anyway, to get in touch with all of those forces and not act on them, but to not be not be in touch with them. My A good friend many years ago gave me a book because I wasn't quite in touch with anger. It was actually Jack Cornfield, who's a good friend, and this is in the 80s. He said, "Here's a book for you." Because I said, anger was one thing it was hard for me to look at it. And it was a compilation of Jungian essays. And the title was Meeting the Shadow, and the subtitle was The Hidden Power in the Dark Side of Human Nature. And it was very informative for me, because I saw and see how if somebody is stifling those alive emotions, they can be stifling their aliveness. So there is a power in connecting with that source of your caring, but to know the line between having those thoughts and feelings and putting them into words and actions.
Yeah.
on
And
a very karmic, on a very karma 101 level.
yes, that's actually what I was going to share when I was a preteen before I'd ever heard of karma. I
Mm,
came up with a theory of of karma and anger and sadness. I didn't know the
what's that?
word karma, but my brother was very angry at me. One of my brothers was very consistently angry at me,
Uh-huh.
and um I didn't fight back with anger. And I was sitting in my room and I was thinking, okay, when somebody gets angry, you can react by being angry or you can react by being sad. And if you react by being angry, then the anger keeps moving along. But if you react by being sad, it gets to end with you.
It gets, what was the last part?
It gets to end with you.
It gets to end with you. Yeah. And there might be times to actually act on that, either sadness or anger, but the key is to transmute all of those feelings into a wiser response than just adding more anger. It could be really clear boundaries or clear communication, or feeling your power and standing up for yourself, or getting some
Oh, it's for
support.
someone else.
But in Karma 101, what I was going to say is we have all the thoughts that we have, and all the feelings that we have that are part of being human, and there's not much you can do to control your thoughts. You're going to have thoughts mostly out of habits and history and or genetics or whatever. But once those thoughts or feelings are expressed as words or as actions, the karmic consequence is much greater. And so you want to express your words and your actions in a way that doesn't cause more reverberation, and then you just have upping the amplitude. But if you're really, if you've done some training, I'm still learning this after all of these years, but certainly a whole lot better at both getting in touch with my anger and expressing it more skillfully, hopefully, then you can be very fierce in your compassion. You have what's called
Mm.
fierce compassion instead of what one Tibetan teacher used to call idiot compassion. Oh yes, it's okay. Oh, I understand, and I'll just you know be a punching bag or whatever, or a codependent, but to have real power and strength and still not come from hatred, but come from caring and just
Mhm.
seeing they just don't know where real happiness lies. They are just lost in their unawareness or their unconsciousness, which is what one of the great teachings is, Jesus on the cross saying, "Forgive them, they know not what they do." And to really understand, even you say, "Oh, sure, they know what they're doing," but they don't really know what they're doing because they don't really know what leads to genuine happiness and well-being because of their own pain.
Yeah. So say more about joy. Like how does how does how does getting in touch with these tough things make space for joy?
Well, actually, again, you want to feel alive, and I think of a key piece in joy of being authentically connected to what your experience is, and from that authenticity and that connection, there's an aliveness, and joy is who you really are. That you're born into this world. If a baby is diapered and fed and given a little bit of love, what do? They squeal with delight. Wow, it's so good to be alive, which is one reason we love being around babies. that's who we are, different than just a fleeting happiness of, oh yeah, this feels good in this moment. But that aliveness is there waiting to be accessed.
Mm.
And then there are practices that can access that joy. That's what I wrote a book on, a number of different sources of joy. But the the general principle is one, to see that well-being comes from developing wholesome states, states that don't have to do with hurting other people or hurting ourselves, states like things, practices like generosity or kindness or compassion or patience or contentment or play, lots of wholesome states. There are a number of different wholesome states. And then when you're in the middle of a wholesome state, don't miss it.
Mhm.
So instead of knowing, oh, I'm feeling pretty good right now, and what's for dinner?
Mhm.
It's tuning into, oh, I'm feeling good right now, and this is what it feels like to feel good. And bringing some mindful connection, not just to the idea that you're feeling good, but to truly savor that feeling of goodness in your body.
Mhm.
What in the teachings, there's a line that that's a key to my course, where the Buddha says there's a feeling of uplift or gladness connected with well-being, and he says that gladness, I call an equipment of mind to overcome all ill will and hostility. So, for instance, you're feeling gratitude, which is one of the most direct sources of well-being. And when you're feeling gratitude, more than just the thought, to really feel it in your body and to let it register, because when you let it register, you're deepening the neural pathways. And the more you practice that, you're on the lookout for goodness, which goes counter to how we usually operate in the world. We have a negative confirmation bias that looks out for danger. And the more you will find what you look for. So the more you're looking for how things are going to go wrong or how people are going to disappoint you or things like that, that's what your brain actually picks up. But the more you look for the good inside or the good in others or the good in life, and the more you bring mindful awareness to that feeling of well-being, the deeper it impacts you. That's one of the keys of mindfulness, that it amplifies a wholesome state. So that takes some practice, but it's very definitely trainable.
Amazing. One question that I'm asking everyone, and I think it might be related, is if somebody is looking for their purpose, how can they use some of these tools to get in tune with what they're meant to do? You kind of said, we're born to be joyous. That's who we really are.
Or well-being. I actually use the word well-being even more than joy, because joy can trip people up, but a general feeling of ease and well-being. Um, so getting in touch with their purpose.
Yeah.
Uh, for me, I find that more than trying to figure something out is asking the right question
Mm-hmm.
and listening for the answer. So if somebody wanted to, came to me with that, I can use you as a person on the street. I would invite, or anyone listening to this, to maybe just go inside for a moment and ask, what really inspires you? What makes you come alive? What uplifts you? And without getting too quick for the answer, to really listen more than think it through. But there's an art in listening, putting in the question, and then listening to what comes up. And your body knows. Your body knows when you are onto something that makes you come alive. Because
Mm-hmm.
all the wholesome states of well-being are states of expansion and relaxation. All the unwholesome states or states of suffering, like fear and anger and wanting and jealousy and envy, they're all states of contraction. And so if you listen and you even sense when you're starting to open and relax, and your body knows, your body doesn't lie. So it's more a matter of really being patient and listening and asking the right questions. That's what I find.
I like that. Thank you. And then the last question is, do you have, are you offering a free gift for for people who want to stay in touch with you, for viewers who?
Yeah, I could offer a free guided meditation along with instructions on basic mindfulness practice. How's that?
Yeah, sounds
Yeah.
perfect. All right. Well, I think we took exactly 30 minutes too. Thank you so much, James. And thank you for the work you do, what you're providing, and thank you for this very, very helpful conversation.
Mm, glad to be with you, Alice. Yeah. Hope people enjoy the your podcast. Yeah. So, okay. Bye.